I've adjusted the microphone settings, so if anyone can let me know if they can hear me, that'd be really helpful. Thank you. I've adjusted the microphone settings, so if anyone can let me know if they can hear me, that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Yes, you can.
Okay, I think that I've now resolved the microphone issues we were having. Thank you to those of you that have commented to let me know. So what you've missed is really just me going through the agenda. So looking at the agenda, I'll just recap it briefly for those of you that may have missed me going through it. So I'm going to start by introducing myself, the Peachy Mind. We'll have a look at the cost of living crisis and how it is impacting mental health. We'll have a look at signs that an employee may be struggling with financial wellbeing, how to have some of those more difficult conversations about cost of living, financial difficulties and mental health. And I'll also be sharing ways in which you can make a difference to mental health. Some practical ways, some meaningful ways that don't cost a lot, but can actually make a huge difference to how someone might be feeling if they're struggling with their finances. So my name's Rebecca Smith. I'm founder of the Peachy Mind. We're a workplace mental wellbeing consultancy. I am a mental wellbeing consultant, supervisor, and my clinical background is in psychotherapy. So we specialise in working with the people in organisations that have mental wellbeing responsibilities. So we work with mental health first aiders, HR, line managers, helping them to do the right things to make a real tangible difference to mental wellbeing in the workplace. And we're really passionate about bringing qualified mental health experts and the knowledge and experience that they have into workplaces to help guide you to do the right things. So let's start by really painting the picture of the current situation in terms of cost of living and financial wellbeing and mental wellbeing. So 40% of the adult population have said that they're feeling anxious or stressed about their financial situation. 30% of adults say that they don't have anywhere to turn or anyone to turn to for support. 1/3 of adults are socialising less because of financial worries. And 1/5 of adults say that their sleep is being affected by worrying about their finances and the cost of living. 3 in 4 employees have never discussed their financial wellbeing with their employer. So there's emerging evidence and statistics to show us the significance of the current situation and the impact it's already having. The Royal College of Psychiatrists stated that the cost of living crisis poses a threat of pandemic proportions to the nation's mental health. So this really, really indicates that it's important that we act early, that we provide help and interventions now rather than waiting for this situation to escalate and become worse. Because as we all know with things related to mental wellbeing, the worse it gets, the harder it is to access support and help. So why does it have such a huge impact on us? Most of us understand it's difficult when we may be struggling financially. We know it's stressful. But why particularly does it psychologically have such a huge impact on us? I want to just cover this briefly because it really helps to underpin some of the recommendations and suggestions that I make in a few minutes. So the cost of living crisis really impacts our most basic needs. We need food, we need shelter, we need human connection. And when there's uncertainty around their availability or our perception of their availability, our stress levels increase. Our brain's primary job is to keep us safe, it's to keep us alive, it's to ensure we have food, shelter, and connection with other human beings. Everything else is secondary. So our brain creates a map of the world to tell us where to go and generates the actions we need to get us there. And under ordinary circumstances, this system works well. But right now, the maps are out of date. The actions that we may previously have taken may no longer be effective. And there's also the issue of shame and loneliness around financial concerns. We may feel ashamed that we're struggling, and this can make us withdraw at a time when actually we most need to feel connected to other people and that we're not alone in our difficulties. So what are some of the signs to look out for in the workplace if you suspect someone may be struggling, or indeed if you are concerned and just would like to spread awareness in terms of what to look out for in relation to the cost of living crisis and financial insecurity? So you might notice that an employee is more tired. Worrying about money impacts our sleep. You might notice an increase in perfectionism and overworking, maybe working later hours. Our self-esteem can take a hit when we're struggling financially. So we may overwork to almost overcompensate for what we perceive to be shortcomings in other areas. It can be difficult to take responsibility. You may notice there's more blaming or criticism of either the employee themselves or of other people. Increased stress around our finances will affect us physically. So you may notice an increase in absences which are attributed to physical illnesses, but are actually being driven by the stress caused by financial insecurity. It can be really hard to concentrate at work when we're worried about money. The part of our brain that is focused on survival and how we are going to meet those most basic needs, it almost overtakes the part of our brain that is responsible for other activities such as creativity, collaboration, empathy, and concentration. You might notice that someone is skipping lunch where they normally perhaps would pop out and buy lunch, and they're perhaps working through it unnoticeably not having anything. Statistically, we know that in the last 12 months, a huge number of adults have missed meals because they're concerned about paying for food. You might notice an increase in someone taking personal phone calls during work time because they're trying to juggle their finances and budgets and demands, possibly for payments and other difficulties. Could be struggling to plan ahead. Perhaps there's goals that have been set for them, deadlines that need to be met, and they're struggling to put things in place and take the necessary actions to get there because they're in that survival mode of how am I going to cope financially. Someone might request a change in their working arrangements. They might prefer, in the current climate, to work from home more than usual to save on fuel costs. Or alternatively, perhaps they don't live far from work and request to come into the office more because that helps save on utility bills. General anxiety symptoms can be attributed to financial pressures. You might notice that someone that has previously been really sociable is socialising less, perhaps to save money. And again, linking back to some of the other things, you might notice there is a decrease in productivity as a lot of their brain resources are tied up with trying to manage their financial situation and perhaps worries about how their finances are going to be affected in the future. So there's a huge amount of signs to look out for. And if you're in direct contact with employees, obviously you're in a great position to pick up on some of these signs, but equally having a way of communicating these signs to line managers and to colleagues so that everyone can look out for each other can be hugely helpful in picking up on those early warning signs. So let's assume that you've perhaps spotted some signs that someone might be struggling. Now we're going to have a look at how do you raise that conversation? How do you talk about money? How do you approach someone about their financial difficulties or potential financial difficulties? It's important to talk about money, even if you're not in a position to offer them a salary increase or to help out in some other way financially. But it's hard. We're conditioned not to talk about money. If we think about some of the stories around us when we're growing up, we're absolutely told in most situations that it's not appropriate to talk about money, that it's shameful, that it's private. So it can take real courage to start that conversation. We might have particular worries, and it can help to ask ourselves that question: what are we afraid of? What are our concerns if we raise that conversation with employees? Are we afraid that they're going to get upset and we can't offer them money? Are we concerned that we may not be able to help in other ways? It's really, really important to try and have these conversations, because asking employees if they're struggling and asking them what they may need or what may help can actually be really empowering for them during what may feel like a powerless situation. It makes them feel valued. It makes them feel important. It can really help you to understand what they're going through and to remove some of that secrecy and shame and perceived judgment around money and financial difficulties. So let's move on to looking at how can we make a difference. Obviously, ideally, we would contribute more financially. We would make sure everyone was being paid the living wage. And obviously, if you are able to do those things, that is fantastic, and they will help alleviate some of the stress. But what I wanted to highlight in this webinar is some things that you can do that will still make a difference if you are not in a position to be able to increase salaries or offer financial assistance in other ways. So looking at financial advice and support, highlighting and communicating what employee benefits and rewards you may have available can be hugely helpful. They may have been available for a while, but communicating again can be really, really useful because it highlights their availability and how to access them at a time when, although employees may know these things exist, they may not be on their radar if they are stressed and struggling financially. There are also some free avenues of support. So there's the money advice service, there's the national debt line, there's step change, the citizens advice service, and the money and pension service. All of these are regulated services. So you can be safe in the knowledge that you are signposting employees towards services that are regulated by the government, are free, and have a responsibility to give sound, reliable financial advice. Because obviously, unless you are qualified to give financial advice, I would gently suggest that we steer away from doing that. But the research is there to support that even just receiving financial advice, perhaps support with setting a budget or reducing bills in some way, can really have a massively positive impact on mental well-being. It can increase feelings of security and control at a very difficult time. So looking at working arrangements, I mentioned earlier on that you may notice as a sign that someone needs to make personal calls. You could, if possible, provide a quiet space for them to be able to make those personal calls privately. There may be reasons why they need to make them during the day, and also they may have other responsibilities at home that make it difficult to make those calls. Providing that space and communicating that it's available without questions being asked really shows that you care, that you understand, and that it's nothing to be ashamed of, and that space is there. It reduces some of that stress of trying to fit something into a lunch hour or into a break time, particularly if you're expecting to receive a call and you need to go and find somewhere quiet to be able to take that call. Reviewing hybrid working arrangements. So lots of you will already have these arrangements in place, but reflecting and reviewing them now in light of potential changes to people's finances can be really helpful, because it will allow them to have some control and to try and make positive changes where possible. So it may be that some people want to work from home whilst the weather's nice, and then may want to move to the office more, perhaps as they're going to need to put the heating on and their bills will increase at home. Similarly, if you're able to, introducing more flexibility in working hours. So if they have perhaps childcare responsibilities and their hours could be adjusted in a way that reduce some of their child costs, or just reducing stress, or allowing them time to be able to access self-care activities, stress-reducing activities. Again, just where possible, being more flexible can really, really help with that. So here I've listed some really human ways of showing that you care. They're low cost, if not free, but they are the things that culturally within your organisation will make that difference at a really difficult time. These are the things which encourage loyalty, which boost morale, which help employees to feel valued, not just for the work they produce, but as individual human beings. So showing empathy and understanding, that can be having those difficult conversations and saying, help me to understand. Empathy, just to clarify, is when it's about the other person's experience. It's not about how sorry we may feel for them, but it's about them. It's about saying you are not alone. We may not be able to solve this, but you don't have to go through it by yourself. You could look at developing a financial wellbeing policy to provide clarity on your commitment to supporting those people who may be struggling with financial insecurity and the cost of living crisis. And you could integrate this into your overall wellbeing policy and sharing it with employees to really demonstrate that commitment and open that door to those conversations. I've listed there again, courageous conversations. So, putting ourselves in those difficult situations to reduce shame and stigma, to allow people to feel able to talk to us about any difficulties they may be experiencing. If you have mental wellbeing support available, highlighting that. Perhaps you've got mental health first aiders, mental health champions, and showing people that is available should they need it can be really helpful, because financial pressure on its own can cause difficulties with our mental health. But if we were already struggling with our mental health, it will exacerbate those issues we were already having. So increasing clarity and certainty. Financial insecurity is a time of uncertainty. We might feel insecure, unsafe, confused. Anything you can do to be clear, whether that be in terms of communicating responsibilities, obligations, etc., or whether that be in terms of communicating with clarity what support you're able to offer. And being honest, if you're not able to provide financial assistance, let them know, because it is always better to be clear and certain, because then we're in a more powerful position to move forwards and to plan based on truth and knowledge rather than confusion. Increasing autonomy, is there a way you can introduce this into somebody's role if they're struggling? They may find it helpful to feel that they have more control over one area of their life, even if they don't have a huge amount of control over the increases in cost of certain things, food, fuel, etc. Are there free activities that you could host that would maybe boost morale, boost self-esteem, just provide pleasure and enjoyment and a break away from the stresses that they might be currently experiencing? I've particularly highlighted free because it can be difficult to get the balance right in terms of spending money on perhaps expensive activities. Could be difficult when we're perhaps not in a position to increase salaries or to provide financial assistance in other ways. And then finally, I've put sleep, mindfulness, and exercise. Showing that you are committed and care about these things is probably one of the most significant things you can do in terms of supporting the mental well-being impact of the cost of living crisis, because neuroscience tells us that these are the three key things that make a huge difference to our ability to navigate difficult circumstances. And these 3 things don't have to cost anything. So you can find huge amounts of free resources online. If anybody would like signposting to them, please let me know and I'd be happy to send you some links. But even just looking around the internet, on YouTube, putting together some resources for these things and sharing them shows that you understand, that you care. Perhaps if you're able to make adjustments so that people are able to access these things more easily. But these 3 things are absolutely key for most of our brains functioning. So if we want people to navigate this crisis successfully, if we want them to be able to concentrate at work, to be productive, really focusing on their sleep, learning mindfulness in terms of being present at work, mentally present, and being able to exercise will all increase their brain functioning and their productivity and their concentration, both inside and outside of work. So this list here really is about your culture. It's really about that human element of how do we show we care if we're not in a position to increase salaries, to provide extra financial assistance. How do we show that we value them, that they are meaningful to us, and that we understand and want to make a difference and support them through this difficult time. So I hope that some of those things have been helpful. I had a question submitted to me prior to the webinar, which I'm just going to answer now. And if anybody has any more that they'd like to put in the box, please feel free to do so. Or if you'd like to email me afterwards, I'd be happy to answer any questions. So the question I was asked that was submitted before is, in the current financial climate, how can we reward employees in a helpful but low-cost way? And this is a great question because huge, expensive employee rewards may not be well received at the moment if the flip side of that is that we're not able to provide actual direct financial assistance. But some of the things that you could consider doing would be the gift of time. So we're giving people perhaps an extra day off where they can look at enjoying the day or reducing their stress. You could ask employees, what makes you feel valued? How can we show you that we appreciate you? Give them some power and influence over ways in which you could reward them. Gratitude, I could do a whole webinar on gratitude. It's hugely important that we simply say thank you. But when I say simply, it's important that we do it in a detailed way. So we look for, I am thankful you did this and this because of this. And we really go into a reasonable amount of detail about what exactly it is that we're thankful for. But communicating that in an email or a conversation or a thank you card in itself actually can really boost someone's self-esteem and make them feel good. And it's a win-win because it makes us feel good to be able to deliver those kinds of things too. And finally, recognising and congratulating achievements outside of work that you may have been made aware of, or life events. Those things again show we value you as a person, as an individual. Your whole life is welcome here. And just simply saying congratulations, sending a card, an email, really recognises that you value everything they have to offer, both inside and outside of work. So I hope that this webinar has been helpful and given you some ideas of practical ways and meaningful ways that you can make a difference at what is a very difficult time and unfortunately likely to get more difficult. But I think the good news is that if you start doing some of these things early, they really will make a significant difference to your employees. So if you'd like to join me for my next webinar, it's going to be on Tuesday, July the 26th at 12 p.m, where we'll be looking at mental wellbeing for retention and recruitment. So I'll be sharing ways in which to shape your wellbeing strategy and offering to attract and retain the best people for your organisation based on what they really want. And we know that people now are looking to what organisations will offer them in terms of their mental wellbeing, above and beyond actually what they're offering salary-wise. So I do hope you'll join me then. And just want to say thank you for spending your lunchtime with me, and I look forward to seeing you soon. If you'd like to get in touch with me or email me with any questions, my contact details are here, and I will be providing a link to this recording. So if you'd like to rewatch it or share it, you're more than welcome to. Thank you.